sexy people of the internet. It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from death metal legends Cannibal Corpse. The band's new album, Chaos Horrific, was released on September 22nd on Metal Blade Records. Formed in 1988, Cannibal Corpse have been at the forefront of death metal, shaping and defining the genre, creating a seminal, incomparable body of work over the following decades. In 2021, they raised the stakes again with their 15th album, Violence Unimagined, growing ever more complex and intense, and in 2023 they returned with its successor, the equally monstrous Chaos Horrific, starting a new chapter in their legacy. Written shortly after the conclusion of Violence Unimagined sessions, due to the pandemic keeping them off tour, echoes of that album exist in Chaos Horrific, but this is a whole new beast of its own. It's a full-on death metal album, Cannibal Corpse style, says Alex Webster. Newest member Eric Rutan has produced...
Rutan's a man, Dave. Don't you try and fucking jump over that pish.
Well, not. Hashtag Rutan's a man. He has produced the last 6 Cannibal Corpse albums, starting with 2006's Kill, and this is Rutan's second release as a full-fledged member since officially joining in 2020. He was already part of the Cannibal Corpse family, so his transition from producer to guitarist, songwriter, producer was seamless, says Webster. Eric's a super hard worker, so somehow he's able to do all of those things at the highest level. We were already very comfortable working with him, and it's only gotten better. We're energised and excited about the future, and Eric's contributions are a big part of that. As Rutan, I feel like every album we've worked on together has progressed forward with a better understanding of each other, allowing us to push each other even further to get the best out of one another. Tracking at Rutan's Mana studio in Florida, the band's home state, was comfortable for all involved, who were at the top of their game and ready to give it their all. Things went smoothly and smoother than ever on the guitar front, thanks to Barrett and Rutan having custom guitars built with longer scale necks to hold the proper intonation necessary for lower tunings, says Barrett. That drastically reduced the hours spent trying to track with a guitar that stays in tune throughout the session. They are already looking ahead to the touring in support of Chaos Horrific, with every track destined to go off.
See another album,
like a buff. Cannibal Corpse are primed and ready to destroy everything in their path. So, as if September couldn't be any more jacked with death metal releases, along comes Cannibal Corpse. I liken...
You know what, Dave? Like, see when the album came through a couple of days ago, and you said, "Well, dare we?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've listened to their shit loads. Let's do this." There was a part of me, a small narcissistic part of me, which was kind of hoping this would suck a little bit. Like, just the way I was like that. Well, let's just make it easier this week, you know. Let's just be like, you know, bands don't do this. They don't just come out of an album, which to me anyway was like career defining, and then switch into, you know, like, oh, we'll just capture lightning in a bottle twice back to back. I was kind of on that level.
Right.
Sorely disappointed.
I kind of liken a Cannibal Corpse album to kind of like wearing your favourite pair of socks, Duncan. It's kind of...
You like socks better than I do.
It's kind of...
I can tell.
Kind of feels nice and comfortable, you know what I mean? Like,
it could be because your socks are clean and mine's tend to be a bit crusty because we use for other...
I mean, mine's have been through the wars.
It's a Cannibal Corpse review. I can be as disgusting as I want.
Yeah, my socks are a wee bit dark as well, Duncan. You know, a wee bit dirty. But
they're not dark after I'm finished with them.
Well,
white sheen.
Every time I slide them on, you know, I've got that wee feeling of contentment, you know, thinking, this is where I want to be. And that's how...
You know what will make your socks slide on easier, Dave? Semen.
Jesus Christ. Too far. Anyway, that's kind of how I feel listening to this album. That's my review. What
your review is? It feels like... I'm sure George and crew will love the fact that Dave described this album as slipping on a pair of comfy socks.
Yep, pretty much. To be honest, it's taken a wee bit of time to get to that stage of reliability, because I think that
right, I see what you're saying.
There was a time where Cannibal Corpse would give you a couple of really good albums, and then maybe just like an okay album. Not always musically, sometimes there was maybe a production element that maybe let it down a little bit. But over the last 10 years, I think the consistency from Cannibal Corpse has just gotten better and better. The last 4 albums, I think, have been very strong, but Violence Unimagined for me sounded like a band rejuvenated, that had this like real, like an injection of new blood.
An EpiPen. Someone got an EpiPen full of fucking adrenaline, stabbed them all in the heart, and then put them behind their instruments and said,
"Yeah,
go."
Yeah, and initially I was like, this will probably be, the last album from them for at least 3 or 4 years, so they'll tour the shit out of this. Didn't expect one to be coming 2 years later.
I said in January, I just want to go back on record, I said in January, the internet is saying, Dave, that Cannibal Corpse are working on something new. And you were like that. They're touring this year, they're coming to fucking Scotland, they are not writing a new album, ain't fucking happening. Duncan, you are a liar. I hate you. There was just a whole list that you smell. It was just a list of things that you said.
Your socks are stinking.
And then your socks are crispy. And then what was it? June or something like that. Like, Cannibal Corpse. Here's a single for the new album. And did I gloat? Did I hold it? Yes, I did. Did I send you messages saying I'm the best? Yeah, I did. But I mean, it makes sense. The press statement there about we've recorded an album, we're getting ready to tour it, the world closes down. We're in a situation where we have the guy that usually records our music, who has a studio, and we're all sitting around with nothing to do, and we've just come out a really productive writing session. Let's continue that on. Kind of makes sense to me. Yeah. So
I'm not complaining.
Just how they've managed to hold on to that.
I will happily take a Cannibal Corpse album every 2 years. I don't care.
And the band will be happy to hear that. They thought it was every 3 to 4, so they can increase that now.
Yeah, even in this insanely good year we've had for music, I'll still take a Cannibal Corpse album. And I think this album sounds like, it's a very good companion piece to Violence Unimagined. The style and compositions are very similar, but not in a. This sounds like a copy of Violence Unimagined.
Yeah, it's not a V2.
No. So. These tracks still have personality. It still would stand out in a live set from the stuff, on Violence Unimagined, production-wise as well, which I'll come on to. I personally think the first half of this album is a fucking mammoth. Like, actually stronger than Violence Unimagined. It is stacked. Like,
see, Frenzied Feeding is one of the most disgustingly heavy death metal songs I've heard this
Christ.
Year.
Oh man,
it is so fucking.
It is.
It's just like they just let them play, and then they just drop down with the riff, and I was like, oh yeah, fucker.
Yeah, I mean, the album kicks off, Overlords of Violence. Killer opening track, sets the tone, delivers something with a bit of speed and a bit of fury. Get the blood pumping. It's a classic Cannibal Corpse opener. Plenty of guitar and drum stabs with that real clangy bass coming in on its own, and they've done that type of thing before on previous tracks, previous albums even, but no real like slow groovy sections. It's just like foot down and just hang on for dear life. It's not the best track on the album, but I think it does the required job. Killer solo on the track as well. For me, though, Cannibal Corpse tend to get better as they get going, and that Frenzied Feeding is just everything I love about Cannibal Corpse. It is fucking unreal. It starts quite hard and fast, but this one has way more switch ups than the opening track, giving you that really like slow churning side of Cannibal Corpse. It doesn't hit till about halfway through, but it's groovy as fuck. Plenty of ride cymbal, so you feel your neck and head just starting to go. The guitars sound super thick, but they've got a really like quite an ominous kind of dissonant melody through them on that track.
Kind of Slayer-esque, we
a little bit.
Slayer introduce a melody and you're like, oh, this is the melody, well then why the fuck am I freaking out right now?
But it's a really cool contrast to what came before and what comes after that track. Summoned for Sacrifice could also be one of the catchiest tracks on the album. I think lyrically it's fantastic from George. There's a lot of really good little lyrical nuggets in there. It's a big mid-pace riff machine for the most part, and there's some little kind of like flurries of speed in there as well. Blood Blind gives you some kind of like classic, almost kind of Morbid Angel style dissonance to begin with, before they head into more like thunderous territory, and they keep it fairly simple on that track. It's just an absolute pummeling of a track. The drum attack paired with those really like chuggy guitar riffs, absolutely killer. There's also something a little bit kind of almost kind of blackened in that track. It's fairly subtle, but certain chords they go for give it a slightly more kind of bleak feel. The solo as well, it starts really different. It was like when the solo kicked in, I was like, is this fucking, they got fucking Frederick Thorndale from Meshuggah on here or something? Because it's like all that really like atmospheric kind of lead work that comes in. I was like, what the fuck's going on here? But then it quickly changes into like that typical Cannibal Corpse kind of solo. Vengeful Invasion, again, another kind of head pounding, definite streak of like the Wretched Spawn on that one, which is one of my favourite albums. And I think right up into the title track, which is slightly a little bit more technical from Cannibal Corpse, probably one of the more intense tracks on the release. I was completely in. I was like, this is fucking all killer, no filler. I'm loving this album. Fracture and Refracture was the track that I just didn't instantly kind of fall in love with. I think it's okay. A bit straightforward.
Yeah, it's a bit stocky, isn't it?
Yeah, nothing.
Like I think Cannibal Corpse could churn out like 100 of these songs with ease.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There isn't anything necessarily remarkable about it compared to the rest.
Totally, yeah. I feel like there was something just missing for it to stand out, a bigger hook, in my opinion. Thankfully, the next track, Pitchfork Impalement, it starts to kind of bring the album back on track. It's a bit more memorable in rhythm and the transitions. Still not quite the fire that I got in the first half of the album, but definitely better than Fracture and Refracture. Pestilential Rictus, is that how I pronounce that? Pestilential.
It's about as close as I would get to it. So.
That track, that's all about the corpse grinder for me. Like his vocal on that track just... Oh, fucking hell. It just drives that track the whole time. And as the track kind of unravels, it starts to show you some really cool change-ups. With the guitars going a bit more, I want to say like a more kind of punkier vibe, kind of. Kind of reminded me of...
Once again, it reminded me of kind of punk era Slayer. You know, Slayer did that. What was it? Wasn't Divine Intervention? Was it Divine Intervention? He did a punk album.
Yeah.
Covers album.
Is that the Undisputed Attitude or something like that? Some bitch like that.
Yeah, that sounds... Yes, that's
something
what
like
it was, Dave. It reminded me of that, where you get like, it's all the thrash and all the punk, but it's heavier than that. Like it's like, well, heavier.
It kind of...
it has that. Is the one that sounds most different from everything else on the album.
It kind of reminded me of early Cannibal Corpse, like early kind of 90s era, where they weren't tuned so low, that kind of style. And then, fuck me, Drain You Empty certainly drained me empty. It is...
Close.
What a slow, monolithic beast to start. And again, this is something they do on the occasional closing track on an album. If you listen to like Kill, the track Infinite Misery, or even the last track in Violence Unimagined, that's a much slower track than the rest of the album as well. But I think this could be their best attempt at this type of track. It is dark, it's methodical, and it just like hammers home why this band are one of the best in the genre.
Corpse Grinder is fucking amazing on it. What we mentioned it 2 years ago vocally when we were reviewing the album, we were like that. Like he's getting on.
Yeah.
And he's never sounded better.
Absolutely. It sounds phenomenal. And that last track, it's almost got a bit of a kind of like doomy kind of streak to it. There's obviously still death metal, but there's a little bit of a kind of doomy kind of pace and kind of tone to it. Loved the way the album ended. Thought it was fantastic. I love the fact that the production in this, again, done by Rutan, but it's not identical to Violence Unimagined. Slightly different kind of tone and character to that last album. Still hugely satisfying to listen to from a production standpoint. The guitar tones are fucking beastly. Again, the bass sits perfectly balanced. It's got a great tone, which helps it kind of keep it distinguishable in the mix as well. Drums are huge, giving it that big backbone. And Corpse Grinder sounds tremendous. I think I love the fact that his voice is so guttural, but you can make out like every word that he's saying at the same time. I think chances are, if you like Cannibal Corpse, I think you'll really enjoy this album. There will be the odd reprobate that will say, "Oh, it's same old Cannibal Corpse," but who else sounds like this? Like, bands will try and emulate this, but they will never outdo.
Album 16.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, at this point now, they are that sound.
They have that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They have perfected that sound. This album has all the tropes and characteristics that you'd want and expect, but you can hear in certain places they're also pushing the extremities of their sound as well a bit more, and sound unbelievably tight. Like, while they're doing it, this band keep getting more and more unified as every album comes out. And again, you can hear on this one, again, it's just even more like just absolutely tighter in feel. Is this their best album? No, I'd still have 2 or 3 above this, but I think it's damn close to perfect. It's not reinventing the wheel, but it shows the band are still improving as musicians, still finding ways to fine tune their songs and their songwriting, still enjoying the process. And what I love about Cannibal Corpse now is that the quality control here is very high. Like, they very rarely drop the ball now. I think the length is perfect, the hooks are there, the riffs are on point. There's maybe 1, possibly 2 tracks that didn't grab me by the nutsack as much as the rest did, but still fucking killer. Absolutely killer. What say you? What are you thinking about the new Cannibal Corpse?
I'm actually pretty much in sync with you here, which surprises me. I thought that maybe my quality control and lack of experience in the death metal arena was making me a little bit too critical. Right. I'm with you. I think tracks 1 through 6 deliver everything, like on par with the previous album. Yeah. For me, Fracture and Refracture is the track where it does feel there's an element missing. There's a bit of the band's personality that just isn't there, and it does feel like a very safe track on an album, which is continually kind of pushing out to feel some space. Yeah. Pitchfork Impalement, I do agree as well. I think it picks up the pace handsomely. It closes super strong. The closing 2 tracks, specifically Drain You Empty, is a fucking crushing song. Yeah. And I would put it almost against anything in their back catalogue for just pure savagery. Guitar work is like unreal. The solos are incredible. The speed at which they rattle rims is just absolutely nuts. And also, once again, remember this is album 16, and granted, there's kind of fresh blood in the band, but the fact that the tracks all feel unique. Yeah, I mean, they don't have riffs where you're like, that kind of sounds similar to the they don't have that. They all have their own little unique identity. Yeah, vocally, I mean, at this point, I think it's just a given. Like, we just have to accept that he's just going to be the best death metal vocalist ever. Yeah, I think he is. He doesn't let up. Yeah. I love his tone because there's no one fucking with it. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's him. You've seen it live, that's him. Yeah. But on this one as well, he does a couple of those, especially in Drain You Empty, where he starts going up the mid to the high range with the screams, and that shit is fucking hot. And I love him about the fact that he doesn't overuse that. It's very easy to overuse that in there. So when you do get them kind of like sparsely placed throughout the album, they mean more, because that's not the core of what he sounds like. Production is incredible again, very very similar, but once again not the same as the previous one. Does make a really cool companion piece to the previous album. I don't think it's as good as the previous album, which for me is the benchmark Cannibal Corpse album. It has maybe 1 or 2 minor missteps. But musically, it stands out against the backdrop of a scene which is already released and delivered some incredible albums this year. And for those, I used to be one of the naysayers that death metal was death metal and everything sounded death metal. it's only really immersed myself in the last couple of years that you can really pick out the personality and the differences in the band. This doesn't sound like Obituary. You know what I mean? It doesn't sound like Sanguisuga Bob. Although they are all in a... They're in a... Like, I could see the tent they're all sitting in. But they're different bands. And Cannibal Corpse have carved out a niche, which definitely many bands emulate and try and copy in on. But what I love about them is, this far into their career, they never stop swinging for the fences on anything. They could play it safe anytime they wanted to, and they never fucking do it. So yeah, Chaos Horrific is up there for me.
Yeah.
Not as good as Violence Unimagined, but then that's like me saying it's not as great as The Greatest Thing I've heard the band do, but it's right below it. So I mean, yeah, I like the fact they churned this out right after the previous one is fucking mind blowing. So
ridiculous. Scores for Chaos Horrific. As I said, I'd agree, not quite as good as Violence Unimagined, but not a kick in the ass off it. I'm going to go 4.5 on this one. Really enjoyable. A couple of tracks that are maybe not as great as the rest, but it's very minor. There's nothing here that you were like, oh, that's dog shit. You know what I mean? It's still, coming from Cannibal Corpse, it's still a decent quality. So I'm going to go 4.5 overall. What about yourself?
100% with you. Yeah, this is in the shade. Like, had there been a longer gap between albums, I might have been in a position where I'm like, all right, well, they're trying something. But that, like, I still spin Violence Unimagined. So it's come very close in the proximity of that. And as a result, I'm kind of comparing it to that. And it does fall short tiny little bit on some things, which would knock it down at 4.5 for me.
Yep, cool. That's the new album from Cannibal Corpse, Chaos Horrific. It's out on September 22nd. Links below to the band, to the pre-order. Check them out. Let us know what you think. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is our review. Thank you so much for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Season gone, and thirsty I can see, saturating the vision. Eternally, this is not a fallacy.